Good to go, Miss Lynetta.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lynetta McIver, Director of Multicultural Outreach, AARP, Louisiana. Before we start today's cooking show, I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you something about AARP. In Louisiana, we proudly serve more than 430,000 members with offices located in Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Our volunteer teams and chapters are also located throughout the state. Presently, our offices are closed due to the pandemic, but we're working together to bring events and activities to you, such as this Wellness Wednesday. Today, we're celebrating fall season by cooking recipes with one of your favorite fall vegetables, pumpkin. We'll feature white bean chili made with turkey. We'll also, as everyone, we're looking forward to homemade cornbread muffins and pumpkin latte. Our chef will also talk about other vegetables and
Miss Lynetta, I think I accidentally muted you. I'm so sorry.
Don't forget, if you're cooking with us today, please show your camera and give us a wave so we can know you're joining us. Oh, good. We have Miss Rosemary, we have Miss Baker, and we have Miss Womack. Thank you for joining us and thank you for cooking with us. Don't forget to send me your email address and I have your email address, but send me your address to my email and it's located in chat. And I will be sure to mail you your apron. Heather, show them that beautiful AARP apron that they will be receiving. Today, we'll be joined by chefs from Tulane University Goldring Center of Culinary Medicine. In the kitchen, we have Heather Nace. She's the program manager, program director. She can give you her full title because it's very long. And then we have Amber Dyer, who will be handling the technical aspects of our programming. So right now, I will turn the programming over to Amber.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm just going to run through a couple quick technical things. When you log on, you should be in a gallery view. In the top hand corner, there's a little grid. They call it a waffle sometimes. You can switch back and forth between gallery and speaker view. I will be spotlighting Chef Heather and her stove camera for you all to see, and that will be done for you. But we will want to switch back to gallery later so we can see everybody. The other thing, if you're on an iPad, you might have to just swipe to the right in order to switch your view back and forth between the speaker and the gallery view. Additionally, there is a chat option that you can click on and then ask any questions that you have in the chat. And Heather and I will see that and we'll ask the questions out loud. If you want to, though, you're welcome to just ask out loud. You start with your screen muted. So you just have to click unmute to ask any questions. We will be checking in with everybody as we go along for the people that are cooking along. But if you have any questions at any time, feel free to interject. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Operations and Executive Chef, Heather Nace. Spotlight you, Heather.
Thanks, Amber. Welcome, everybody. We are really excited to have you join us today for this class. As both Miss Lynetta said and Amber said, my name is Heather. I am a chef and a registered dietitian. I am really excited to share these recipes with you today. This chili is one that I have made at home before just because it's delicious and I love it. And I think it's something that is a little bit of a different take on chili, which is kind of fun that we can explore together. And, the theme, what we thought of with this class was really, what if we, incorporate pumpkin in a couple of different ways? And, really sometimes you use a can of pumpkin, but you don't use the whole can. So what are some things that we can do with maybe like a partial can of pumpkin? So we're going to be doing that today. We have a lot planned. We're going to be making some delicious, fluffy cornbread muffins. Where we have some little modifications that you can choose your own adventure, depending on what type of flavors you like. We're also going to make a really great lightened up pumpkin spice latte, which should be fun. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. I do want to mention, for those of you cooking along, a few things that you should think about having pulled out if you don't already have pulled out, or ready if you don't already have them. So the first thing, it will be that I already have all of my muffin ingredients measured out and ready to go. So while I'm talking, if you don't already have that going on, maybe get it going. I also like to recommend with baking recipes, I pulled my buttermilk and my egg out well in advance of the class, because I know in baking, it's good to work with room temperature, dairy and eggs. You get a better product in the end. So, you know, sometimes when the mood strikes you to bake something and you pull those eggs or the butter right out of the fridge, it's better if you have some patience and allow them to kind of come up closer to room temperature. So definitely do that. I've also already measured out my spices for the chili, and I will talk about that later, but that's just going to save me some time. I have them all in one little bowl here so that we can talk about each one, but that's a good idea to measure out those spices. My turkey is also out of the fridge, sitting on my counter, again, kind of coming up a little closer to room temperature before we cook it. I'm going to go ahead and get my oven preheated to 325. All right. Oven preheating to 325. Now you are going to want to line your muffin pan with liners, and then give them a little bit of spray as well with your nonstick cooking spray. Now, I have these very cute little Halloween liners that I found hanging out in my pantry, so I'm going to go ahead and use those. I do know Ms. Rita was asking a question as we were logging on. She found a silicone cupcake pan at her store and asked if you need to use the paper with the silicone. You should not. So silicone is a really great product because it can stand up to high heat. You know, you're going to see that on some of your utensils nowadays that you use to, you know, cook with, might be made of silicone, but they're coming out with a lot more of these like baking pans or ramekins and things. And what's nice about it, it can stand up to a really high heat, and it's non-stick naturally. You don't need to mess with too much prep, which is good. Okay, otherwise I am going to go ahead and additionally spray my liners with spray, just as an extra fail-safe, make sure that we don't get any stickage. I like to do this over my sink so that I don't end up with cooking spray all over the place. So I'll be right back. All right, perfect. Just a nice little light coating.
Okay, a quick question. So I should not spray the silicone.
You can, it's not going to hurt you to spray the silicone, but I don't think you have to.
Okay, I'll give it a try without it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, what's next? So the other equipment that I have ready for class, I am going to be cooking my chili today in a Dutch oven. I'm actually just going to pull it over here so you can see. So I really like this kind of like enamel cast iron Dutch oven for cooking things like soups and stews and chilies. But if you don't have something like this, a regular, you know, soup pot of some sort would be fine. This chili doesn't make a huge quantity. So like this size that I have here should be good to go. And then I also just have a small pot sitting by the stove ready for when I need to heat up my pumpkin milk mixture later. And then the last thing is just knowing that I need to get some coffee brewed. I'm going to use regular coffee and just brew it pretty strong. If you have an espresso maker or instant espresso, you could certainly use that for that recipe. You definitely have some options there. Okay, let's talk a little bit about spice blends. So we are making our own pumpkin pie spice blend today. And, you know, you can definitely use the made store-bought pumpkin pie spice blend, nothing wrong with it. But we wanted to just go over what spices show up in the pumpkin pie spice blend, because you might already have those hanging around in your pantry, and you could easily just throw this together. What I like about that concept is that I don't have to worry about I'm going to have this thing of pumpkin pie spice and I'm going to use it, you know, a couple times in the fall. And then by the time next year rolls around, how fresh is it? You know, is it going to have a lot of flavor? So I like the idea of doing this if you have these spices in your pantry. So I'm just going to put my camera down so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just have my little bowl. I've got my handy dandy AARP measuring spoons. So this recipe, if you will, for the spice blend is going to be found on your pumpkin spice latte recipe document. I'm going with 4.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, and that may seem like a strange amount. Part of the issue is that I wanted to make a small enough batch of this that I don't want too much of it. I mean, I know myself. I know how much I'll probably likely use in the next few months over the fall and winter. And I don't want to end up with so much that I have to, you know, throw it out next year. So this is a sort of small-ish batch. All right. My next one is going to be my ground ginger. And I'm going to do 1 teaspoon of that guy. And then I do a teaspoon of my nutmeg, which I borrowed some nutmeg from work. And by borrowed, I mean stole, because I'm not going to give it back. But I couldn't remember if I had any here, so I grabbed it. And then the other 2 that I knew I didn't have were the cloves and the allspice. So these are ones where you may not have these. Luckily, you can buy them in a small container. We're going to go with 3/4 teaspoon of each. So I'll just do the 1/4 teaspoon 3 times. Oh my gosh, it already smells so good.
Heather, what is allspice?
You know, I think Amber can probably pull up something for us, but I want to say I think it's some kind of a berry that's dried.
Yes, it's very similar to how they're doing peppercorns. And they are they're from a tropical evergreen tree of the myrtle family, in case you want very specifics. But it looks just like that.
That is a very specific information. It's one of those things that a lot of people, yeah, you don't know what it is, but you know that you see it come up this time of year, holiday time. I'm just kind of, my ginger was a little clumpy, so I'm just trying to like break it up a little bit with my little mini baby whisk here. You can also just do this with a fork. And so you see, you don't have a ton of this mixture. We have a good amount. What's cool is that we also have a modification or an option with your cornbread muffins. If you want to throw a little bit of this in the cornbread muffin, it might sound very strange to you to put pumpkin pie spice in a cornbread muffin, but we did actually test this at the kitchen and we know that it came out very delicious and it makes a really nice complement to this chili. So you can think about that. We're definitely going to set this aside to use later for our lattes. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is Amber will probably be sharing with you, if she hasn't already, a link to a handout that we have about popular spice blends. I think we've shared this on these classes before, but it's such a good one that I wanted to mention it again. You know, keeping spice blends in your pantry is a great way to add quick, easy flavor to your dishes that doesn't involve particularly sodium, you know, extra sodium when we're talking about our savory stuff. So, you know, I'll be honest, my pantry, I have a combination of both. I have store-bought blends and I have blends that I've made at home. Some of my favorite that we do often are the salt-free taco seasoning. We have a salt-free Creole seasoning. We have a Moroccan spice blend that is like my all-time favorite. I love that on chicken. And we do that recipe. Amber could throw that in the chat for you as well. They're all on our website. But it's a great, quick, easy thing. Now, the store-bought blends, you just got to be careful, right? Because they tend to have salt already added. And I like the idea of making my own sometimes because that way I can control the level of salt in my seasoning blend. All right, I think the next thing.
Heather,
yeah.
Before you move on, I did want to mention that you all included this great sheet on your site, if you went on it, that has 9 different spice blends you can make at home. She mentioned that, and I pulled it down and I printed it. I'm so impressed with the organizations and the way you all listed things. And I definitely will be adding these spices to my cabinet. It's so exciting to make your own spices to cook with.
It's definitely a very easy way to do it. You know, Heather, Lisa Collins mentioned that she's veganish and she doesn't drink coffee. And so she added this spice blend to some coconut milk and she thought it was super delicious. I bet that would be the same with like almond, oat milk, almond milk, maybe. I have tried it with making teas and adding the spice blend. So it's definitely could be almost like a homemade chai action. I love that idea, Lisa.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Sorry, I had to plug my computer in so I don't die while we're doing this. Yeah, no, I love that idea. I know, Amber, you're a big tea drinker, so I think that using this spice blend in that way is great. Okay, let's talk a little bit about fall and winter veggies. I'm going to, let's see. Oh, just kidding. Technical challenges. I'm going to share my screen because I want y'all to see some pictures here. Hopefully everybody can see that.
Looks good.
Okay, so I want to start off with talking a little bit about some of our seasonal produce, what the deal is, you know, maybe some ideas of what we can do with these items. So I'm starting off with our winter squashes based on the responses from the questions that y'all answered when you signed up for the class. This seems to be the one that people wanted to know about the most. So we're going to start here. The deal with winter squashes is unlike their summer counterparts. These tend to have a tough outer skin, which we don't want to eat. Unlike things like, you know, with our zucchini and yellow squash in the summer with the nice soft skin that we can eat the whole thing. With these, most of the time, we're going to need to peel them. And, you know, it makes sense then that they are considered winter vegetables because that just means that they can keep longer. You know, oftentimes you can buy a butternut squash or an acorn squash and you can keep it around for like a month, if not longer, in your pantry. So they do really keep well because of that. So we can start by talking a little bit about that butternut squash. So you'll see, I don't know if you can see my little cursor here, but it's the one sort of in the middle here. It's got the bulb on the one end and a long neck. I like that this picture shows us both the inside and the outside, so we get a sense of that. If you've never broken down a butternut squash before, it can seem a little intimidating, but it actually isn't that bad. I usually like to start by cutting the two sections in half and then work my way around. I will peel it with my vegetable peeler. You do need to scoop out those seeds from the inner section. And then once you've done that, you can just cut it up, dice it up, whichever way you need it. You know, it's delicious roasted. You can also boil it and mash it or puree it. It works well to be added to things like soups, stews, curries, whether that is in a pureed fashion or just in like a whole cubed fashion. I also really like that you can buy frozen, peeled, you know, cubed butternut squash, which is great to adding to recipes. We have a great recipe for our butternut squash mac and cheese, which uses that frozen variety. You could also use the fresh if you happen to have it. It's really good. Works well in both sweet and savory applications. I will say the butternut squash tends to be the sweetest of all of these winter squashes. So if you're looking for that sort of like pumpkin-esque flavor, the butternut squash is actually the one you probably want to go for the most. The next ones that I want to talk about are right underneath the butternut squash. We have two different varieties of the acorn squash, and you can see it kind of has the shape of an acorn when you look at it. And then right next to that to the left, we have this long skinny one with the green and white outside. That's going to be called a delicata squash. Now these are a little different in that their skin is thin enough that we can actually eat it. So you could peel it, but if you see on the outside, it's very bumpy and ridgy. So it could be, it would be difficult to get that peeled properly. So the better thing to do is to just leave that skin on. The delicata makes for great stuffing. You know, think about if you just scooped those seeds out, roasted it up, and then you can fill it with some kind of like great filling, you know, some kind of mixture of like vegetables, a grain, even meat fillings would be delicious. Have a little cheese on there. Same thing with the acorn. You can do the same technique, but the acorn also lends itself well to just being like sliced into these like little half moon shapes, which you can then roast up. You can add it to a salad. You can just eat it as a side dish. Really, really delicious. The last one I kind of want to mention about our squashes is up here in the upper right-hand corner is our spaghetti squash. And this is one that is a little bit different. And if you've had a spaghetti squash, you know, the reason it's called spaghetti squash is because once it's cooked, if we take a fork and scrape out the inside, we end up with these like spaghetti-like strands, which you can use as a pasta replacement. They're also equally delicious just on their own. If you saute them with some garlic and olive oil and maybe some onion, and you know, you can do a lot with them. Add your favorite spice blend to the mixture. For these, I will say what you want to do is you want to cut it in half, scoop out the seeds. You can either rub a little olive oil on it, maybe some salt, pepper, place it cut side down on a sheet tray, and then roast it in the oven to cook it. Once a knife can stab through it easily, you know it's done. You'll let it cool and then you scrape it. Alternatively, these also work really well to cook in the microwave. And usually when you get them in the store nowadays, they'll have a sticker on them that actually tells you how to do that. So that's really convenient. And Amber will probably share with you some resources in the chat with a little bit more information about some of this squash stuff. She's also going to end up sharing, if she hasn't already done it, a page on our website that has some really nice seasonal recipes that have been developed by our dietetic interns over the last year and a half. So we've got some really great ones featuring some of those squash items in particular. So I definitely recommend checking those out. So our next category of vegetables that we see a lot in the winter is our cruciferous vegetables. So these are going to be things like your broccoli, your cauliflower. The one in the middle there, that's called Romanesco. So it kind of looks like a cross between a broccoli and a cauliflower in terms of the color, but it's got sort of like the pointy florets, which are interesting. You have your cabbages, your Brussels sprouts, which are like little baby cabbages. And then the one that you see here that's this round light green thing you may be less familiar with, that one's called Kohlrabi. So Kohlrabi is interesting. I've actually personally never had it before, but I'm really, after doing some more research on it, I'm kind of intrigued and I think I might want to have to give it a try. But apparently it tastes a lot like the texture and flavor of broccoli stems. So if that's something you're into, this could be an interesting one for you to try. You do need to peel it, and then you can treat it just like anything else, right? Peel it, cut it up, roast it, boil it, steam it, whatever cooking method you can saute it. It will take a little bit, but you can do it. And then I also just like to mention, as far as cauliflower goes, I mean, you probably already know this, but cauliflower is the new kale. I think. I don't know if there's a newer thing that's replacing cauliflower, but you see it everywhere. It's like the popular hot trend food of how many different things can we do with a cauliflower, right? Like we can turn it into rice. We can make it into like a substitute for mashed potatoes. I've seen tater tots that they've made out of cauliflower, or like gnocchi that they make out of cauliflower. So you can really do a lot with it. It's super versatile. My favorite personal way, all vegetables, to be honest with you, is just to roast it with a little oil, salt, and pepper. And then you can, jazz it up from there. If you want to add a spice blend, depending on what you're doing, or maybe a squeeze of lemon, some Parmesan cheese, but sometimes just keeping it really simple is a great way to treat it, particularly if you are, wanting to cook it up in advance, like on the weekend maybe, and then have some leftovers throughout the week. If you do kind of keep it plain, then you can play around each time you go to work with it. And then the only other thing I like to mention in this category is I love Brussels sprouts. They're my favorite. I've actually loved them since I was a kid. I even liked them when they were frozen out of a bag and boiled, which I know sounds crazy, but I do love Brussels sprouts. I know, I was a weird kid, I think. Brussels sprouts and broccoli were like my two favorites, and they still are. But a new thing I've been doing, which can be like a really quick, convenient side dish if you're interested. You may have seen in the store, they have the bag of the pre-shredded Brussels sprouts, which is super convenient because you could cut them yourself like that, but it's going to take you a little while. I buy the bag of the pre-shredded Brussels sprouts. I get my pan really hot. I'll usually add about half of it, let them kind of get a little bit of charring on the edge, like let them get really brown, but do it sort of quick and fast so that they don't get mushy. Take that out, put in the other half, add the other half back in. And then the key there is you need to let them have room. So if you crowd the pan, it's never going to work. But if you do them in batches, it'll be great. Then throw in a little garlic, squeeze of lemon, Parmesan cheese. So delicious. Easy, quick side. Don't have to measure anything, just eyeball it, squeeze some lemon, grate on a little Parmesan, little salt, pepper, goes a long way. Very, very delicious. If you like Brussels sprouts, it's kind of like a different way to try them. Oh, now we have our beautiful root vegetables. This is another favorite category of mine. I'm not going to lie. So let's see, your upper left-hand side, these colorful carrots you have here, if you've never tried the different varieties of the colored carrots, I would say give them a try. I don't necessarily know that they taste a whole lot different, but it just could be fun and something pretty to give those a try. In the middle, next to those, you have those things that look like a white carrot. Those are going to be your parsnips. Parsnips are really interesting because they do have a bit of a peppery bite to them. Although if you roast them, that you get a nice balance because the sweetness comes out and then you just have like a little bit of a peppery bite with the sweetness, which is pretty cool. Next to that one on the upper right-hand side, you have beets, and we have a couple different colors of beets going on here. I will say, if you think you don't like beets, I would recommend giving these golden beets a try because they're much less minerally in flavor. I personally really love beets. I do think they have that kind of minerally, earthy. Some people say they taste like dirt. I see where they're coming from. I personally really enjoy that. But if you don't, try golden beets because they don't really have that level of earthiness, but they're very, very delicious. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, so sweet potato, you know sweet potato. You probably have enjoyed many sweet potatoes in your life in a variety of ways. The two next to that are the ones that I think are probably the most interesting or different. So on the far left, the smaller ones here we have of the white and purple, that's a turnip. And then in the center, which are a little bigger, they still have that purple hue, but they're more of a golden yellow tone. Those are going to be our rutabagas. So the turnips are going to be much closer to what you would expect from a radish. So they definitely have that crunchy, crisp radish texture and that peppery bite to them. Whereas your rutabaga is going to be much more mild and a little smoother. It definitely is a combination of the bitter and the sweet. The rutabaga in particular does very well and kind of can do anything a potato can do. So you can mash it, you can roast it, you can add, dice it up and add it to soups and stews. What's cool is they definitely will keep for a while. You can keep it on your counter for 2 weeks and you can keep it on the counter for at least a week. And in the fridge, you can get at least up to 2 weeks with those. They're also a really great source of vitamin C, which is interesting because I think we don't always think of, actually all of these that I'm talking about right now are pretty good source of vitamin C. And, we often don't think outside the box when we're thinking of vegetables that give us different vitamins. I don't know that people would necessarily think root vegetables, vitamin C, maybe the carrots. What else? I think that's all I have to say about that. The turnips, definitely because they're more radish-like, you can eat them raw like a radish, but you can also do other things with them, cook them. Some people may say they get a little bitter, so the pepperiness can turn kind of bitter. But I think it's nice to think about balancing our flavors, right? So we have our 5 different flavors. Bitter is one of them. We also have salty, sweet, sour, and umami. So, balancing a bitter vegetable with something a little sweet or something a little salty, a little acid can really play nicely on your taste buds when you're eating. All right, our last category is our leafy greens. So here I've shown at the top, middle, and top left, these are two different varieties of kale. You've probably seen these in the store sold in bunches or even pre-cut in bags. In the middle, you have your standard curly kale, very common, relatively inexpensive. Next to that, over here on the left, we have the dinosaur or Jacinto kale. This is a really cool product too. It's just got a different texture to it. I really like both of these, and I think they can very easily be used interchangeably. So one thing that's so great about kale is, like, today I'm going to add a couple of cups of chopped kale at the end of my chili, just to give it some extra color, give it some nice vitamin boost to the dish. But you can also eat kale raw, which is really nice. We do recommend that when you eat it raw, you do give it a bit of a massage. So you literally rub the leaves in between your hands. And later when I have my kale, I can kind of show you what that looks like. But that is going to break down the cellulose, which is that fiber component. You know, kale, if you've ever just taken a bite of it raw, it is fibrous and it does require a lot of chewing. So if you give it this little massage before you eat it raw, you can kind of break it down in advance so that you don't have as much digestion in the mouth to do. To the left of that, we just have some spinach, which, you know, I feel like nowadays people don't eat big spinach. They eat baby spinach most of the time, but it's good to remember that spinach does grow into a mature product that we can also use. I mean, as you probably know, spinach is probably your most delicate of your greens. Another great one that can be eaten raw because of that, but also it's that one that's going to cook down to like nothing once you cook it. And it definitely will get the softest when you cook it. On our bottom row, I have across the bottom, on the left, we have our collard greens. In the middle, we have our mustard greens. And on the right, we have our chard. And in this case, you see there's rainbow chard. That just depicts the different color stems. Swiss chard, you'll also see those tend to just be like a regular green or white stem product. They're all very easy to interchange. So if you have a great recipe you love for like a braised collard green, think about trying it with a chard. I also find chard is a little bit kind of like between a collard green and a spinach. So it does lend itself well to a quicker saute, which is really nice. And the stems are very delicious to be eaten also, you know, cutting them up into small pieces. You can actually start with sauteing them first to give them a little head start to soften, and then go in with your leafy parts after. I think that, you know, it's great to remember that even just a quick saute with some garlic and olive oil can make a great side dish, as well as my favorite thing to do with greens, which is to add them to everything. When I first personally started eating a little bit healthier, it was honestly the very first thing I did. I said, how can I start eating a little bit healthier? What can I do? And I thought, where can I add something green to my plate? And so it's a very easy little trick of just like, take some spinach, take some kale, take whatever kind of greens you have and add it into whatever you're doing. It's so easy, so simple, and you'll really boost the nutrition. All right, I think it's time for us to get cooking. I'm going to start our cooking today with our muffins. Then we're going to move on to the chili, and we're going to do our latte last. And I'm sorry, I'm shuffling all my papers because my little thing that I used to hold up my papers broke right before class. So we got to make it work. All right, muffins. We're making these great cornbread muffins today. I'm going to grab my supplies. I have everything. This is, I will say, this is like a perfect example of some mise en place. So I've got all my stuff measured out, ready to go. I conveniently have it on a little sheet tray here to make my life easy. Let me just shuffle some things around. I'm going to just set this over here to the side so I can grab my mixing bowls. So you are going to need 2 bowls for this. We're going to put all of our dry ingredients in one bowl, and then we're going to mix all of our wet ingredients in the other and then combine. So for our dry ingredients, we have our 3/4 cup of our cornmeal. We have 1 cup of all-purpose flour. And then we have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, which I didn't get, but let me go ahead and grab it. I have my salt. I keep this on the edge of my stove, so it's pretty convenient for me. And I do have 2 different kinds of salt here. This is my kosher salt. And then I have like a finishing kind of large crystal salt. All right, then we have our baking powder. So we're using a tablespoon of baking powder in this recipe, and that may seem like a lot, and it is a lot, but that's going to be really the key between the baking powder and our buttermilk. That's how we're going to get them nice and light and fluffy. I'm going to go ahead and just give this a little whisk, try to get all that dry stuff well combined. And then we can go ahead with our wet. So for our wet, we have our canola oil, our buttermilk, our egg, and then we're actually going to put our sugar in with this. One thing I just like to mention, I think this is important. I learned this a long time ago. Crack your egg into a separate bowl, and also don't crack it on the edge of the bowl. It really is better to give it a crack on your counter. Cracking it into the bowl, a little bowl first, is going to save you from having shell in your batter, or if you're doing something where you need the yolk to stay, intact. If you have a broken yolk, you can weed that out. And actually, I think I got a little shell. No, it's not a shell. It's just a little imperfection. Okay. I'm going to do a tablespoon of my canola oil. Now you could use butter for this. We just swapped to the canola oil for a little bit more heart healthy fat for you. And then we have a cup of our non-fat, or you can use low-fat buttermilk. I know sometimes in the stores it's hard to find the non-fat and you can only get the low-fat. Either way. Nowadays, you're not going to see as much of the full-fat buttermilk. So either one of those works. And then I'm going to go in with my sugar. We're using 1/3 of a cup. It's honestly really not that much. You're going to, if you look at the nutrition facts of these muffins, you will see that they are going to be way less sugar and calories than if we used a little box mix. And I will say, I have definitely used the box mix, but this is an easy option. I mean, this is not very difficult. Okay, now I'm going to just pour my dry ingredients into the wet, and I'm switching to a rubber spatula. And hopefully you can see, I do want to use a bit of a folding motion. This is a kind of an interesting one. You want to get it well mixed, because one thing you really don't want to have is you really don't want to have some like a pocket of baking powder. That would be not delicious. But you don't want to overmix it. So I'm just sort of scraping down to the bottom, making sure I don't see any dry pockets. But you will notice, hopefully, that the batter is pretty lumpy looking, and that's good. That's fine. Lumps are okay. You just don't want to see any white streaky bits. Okay, now I'm going to set this aside for about 10 minutes. That's going to give us some time for the buttermilk to really hydrate the cornmeal. So I'm just going to set this aside. Now for my cornbread muffins today, I've opted to go for the jalapeno and cheddar route. So I do have already a little bit of shredded cheddar cheese. It's about 1/2 cup that I'm going to add. And then I'm going to dice up probably will only put 1/2 of this jalapeno in, but it's a good thing to show in case you're kind of scared to work with jalapeno. I'm going to show you how I break this down. This is one time that I do switch over to my little paring knife because it gives me a little bit more control when I'm working with this little pepper here. I always start by taking off the top, and then I'm going to go break it down the middle. Now, Amber has a different way of cutting this than I do. I know she will take off each side of the pepper, just like we do with our bell pepper, which you'll see me do later, but this is the way I've always done it. I'm just going to go in now with this paring knife and just get that rib out of the middle. shake out my seeds. Now, I'm not wearing gloves right now. I'm going to make sure that I wash my hands. I'm only going to do the 1/2. I'll make sure I wash my hands really good. But if you do have issues with spice, you can definitely throw a pair of gloves on. Now, for this step, I am going to switch back over to my big chef's knife. And I'm just going to go make really little cuts lengthwise to give me some nice thin strips. Pile them all up and cut through the other way to give me my little minced jalapeno. You know, ideally you don't want giant hunks of jalapeno. You want these to be really small so that they'll spread out amongst your muffins. As I mentioned, we have the option to do, I'm just going to add that to my bowl of cheese and I'll dump that all in together once our muffins are ready. We have the option also listed of adding some frozen corn. We did test a version of those. That was very delicious too. So if you like, you know, that whole kernel corn action, that can be a fun option. You could also do the corn and the cheese if you like.
Heather,
Yeah.
quick question. Can you mention to the group about what you can do if you don't have buttermilk, like how you can make it or a substitute option?
Yeah, so for buttermilk, you can use regular milk and then you will add a little acid to it. I don't know the exact ratio off the top of my head, but if you Google, Google will tell you exactly what it is. But you can use lemon juice, works really well. You will give it a squeeze of lemon juice and then let it sit on the counter. That's going to sort of like acidulate it and give you the same properties that you would find in buttermilk. I've also seen that they have different options nowadays. Like they have like I think like a shelf stable like powdered buttermilk that you can buy, which could be really convenient for if you're somebody who's like, I can't be fooling around with remembering to buy buttermilk, or I only needed a cup for this and I ended up having to buy a big whole thing. You know, you could keep that powdered kind. I think there might also be a frozen option. Maybe Amber can research that while we move on, since she's in front of her computer there.
I'll look it up. The other thing, one of our participants mentioned that she tends to put more cheese in than you did in the recipe. I was thinking to your recipe testing situation and what happened when you add too much cheese to a recipe.
Yeah, I will say, so I made a version of this and I really wanted to put more cheese because I was like, yeah, more cheese, delicious. Hello. And I knew I actually did have the room for it nutritionally, but when I did it, I had double the cheese. I think I had a cup of cheese for this particular batch. It kind of messed with the texture of the cornbread, I found. Now, maybe if you saved some of your cheese just to put on top towards the end of the baking, it would not happen to you. But when I folded that much cheese into my mixture, it ended up that my muffins were much more gummy and like stodgy than what I wanted them to be, a light, fluffy cornbread. I will say too, Amber can attest, I tried it many times. I really wanted to put the canned pumpkin in the cornbread muffins, but it just did not work out very well. You can do it, but I will tell you, you end up with a cross between a fluffy cornbread and you know what pumpkin bread tastes like, right? Like it's got that kind of dense, moist richness that those two things don't really like work together. So we did try it with the pumpkin pie spice though, 2 teaspoons of it, delicious, really interesting and different. So maybe think about giving that a try. Okay.
Heather, I know we're about to start the chili. Is this something that you could use the pumpkin spice blend in the chili?
Yes, I think so. We'll talk when I get to the spice part of this, let's talk about that more. I want to start getting our veggies chopped so we can get this chili going on the stove. So I am gonna do a little refresher of an onion demo because I know some of you have been with us many times, but I think it's a good opportunity to just remind everybody how we dice an onion to make our lives super simple, quick, fast, easy, wonderful. Okay, so we're gonna start when we dice an onion, we wanna leave the root intact. So I'm gonna start by taking off the other end. And then I have a nice flat surface. My onion's not rolling around on me. And I can take my knife and cut directly through that root to give me 2 nice pieces. Now, you saw before, most of my papery skin was coming off. But when we cut it this way, it makes it really easy to get that any last remnants of papery skin off of each half. And we are going to use this whole onion. We don't have a ton of different vegetables going on in this chili. I will say you could use this as a blueprint. You know, if there's another vegetable that you would like to add to this, by all means, give it a try. I'm now going to go and I want to cut my onion. I'm not going to go all the way through, about 3/4 of the way. I'm going to make my perpendicular slices here. And now I'm cutting this in a fairly small dice. I don't want giant pieces. I want it to, you know, I think about like, how is this going to be on my spoon when I go to eat it? And so I think about that when I'm choosing how big to cut my pieces of onion. Once you get to where you stopped cutting all the way through, you might find that this piece here isn't all the way cut. I will usually just go back like this and give it a couple quick little slices, and I can do the other side a little slower. I'm gonna go ahead and get this in a bowl. Okay, so I've got my initial cuts going in. I'm trying to do a good job of keeping my fingers out of the way, but you know, holding this stable. When I go to cut in the opposite direction to get my dice, I want to make sure I have my claw grip going on, and I'm moving my knife across and moving my fingers back. Pretty quick. All right, now we're going to tackle our bell pepper. Now today I have this beautiful yellowy orangey pepper, but this recipe, honestly, you can use whatever you like. I just thought it would make for a nice color in the dish, so I went with the yellow pepper. And we're going to do this just like we always do our peppers, by thinking of this as having windows or different sides to it and cutting them off one by one. You'll notice a lot of times peppers have like a very clear 4 sides, sort of like a square shape. Sometimes you got a little bit of wonkiness and you know you're going to have to make a few more cuts or a few less cuts. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick one to start off, get my window off, lay my pepper down on its side, and then I can go around, keep flipping it. And I had a feeling I was going to end up with a weird piece, but that's okay. And hopefully at the end, what you have is this pepper that's still intact with all the seeds, making our life very easy. I do like to cut the bottom off and use that because that's nice, usable product. Now we have these beautiful planks that we can work with, and planks are the perfect thing we need to get us to a dice. We'll take a plank to a strip, and then a strip to a dice. And if you want to practice your knife skills, it's a good thing to keep in mind. Trying to keep the tip of your blade on your board and use this rocking motion that hopefully you can tell I am using. And as you get better and better at it, you'll get faster and faster. And all of a sudden, doing your prep work like this doesn't really feel as much like a chore. It can feel, you know, pretty relaxing, and you can get through it in easy fashion. I will say, I know we talked about the root vegetables being a great source of vitamin C. One thing that people don't realize is that bell peppers have even more vitamin C than citrus fruit. We always think about orange and orange juice as being our best source of vitamin C, but bell pepper actually is a little bit better. So just another reason to add some more to your food. Definitely, it's nice. It adds a beautiful color. Now, you see I had a little bit of excess rib there, which I don't personally like, so I get it out. You can also just use your hands to kind of pull it out gently. The good thing about this chili too is that we don't have a ton of chopping to do. After I do this, I'm gonna do a little garlic, and then that's pretty much it, other than I'm gonna deal with my kale, which is gonna go in at the end. But honestly, I probably will just pull that into little pieces with my hands. We're gonna see. I'll scope it out and see what it's looking like. But I might be able to get away with not even using my knife on it. Now, you know, one thing to keep in mind when you're cutting things, the reason that we like to try to cut things nice and neatly and all similar sizes is that not only does it look very pretty, but it also cooks more evenly and ultimately then will result in a better tasting dish. So that's why we do that. Okay, got to do my garlic. This should be a refresher for a lot of people, but I just want to go over it. Best way to do garlic is to make sure that you have the ability to have the handle of your knife blade off your board so that you can get your blade of your knife as flat as possible. If I do this up here, my knuckles are going to hit my board and I can't really get the blade very flat. So I like to come back on the edge of my board. I put my blade facing away from me, and then I put the heel of my hand and just give a little press down to give it a smush. This can be difficult if you're a little shorter and you have a hard time getting up and over your countertops if they're very high. Smushy, smushy. All right, there we go. Sometimes you got to put a lot of weight into it. Once you do that, your peels should just slip right off. And off to the side here, and you can't see, I just realized, but I have my little scraps bowl. It's very great technique to do so that you don't have to be running to your trash or wherever to get rid of your scraps. So we can just kind of keep moving as we get through this. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do for a nice mince on this is I'm going to go back through and just press down, making sure that all of my pieces are nice and smashed as much as I can get them. And then I'll just pile it up and start cutting again, my rocking motion back and forth, up and down. Every once in a while, you are gonna need to scrape down the blade of your knife. And now I have a pile of some roughly chopped. I can go back through and go in every direction, back and forth, scrape it down. You'll see I'm putting my non-dominant hand on the top of the knife, flat like this, just to give it a little guidance. And you can take this as far as you like. I mean, the smaller you chop it, the more potent the flavor will be, because you're going to disperse, you've got a lot more surface area and you're going to disperse it throughout your dish. If you don't love garlic flavor, I will say that's a good tip. You know, you can still use garlic, but you can just throw the garlic in once it's in that smashed state and then fish it out at the end of your cooking. If you're not really big into it, having the full garlic little particles in your food. You could also do a sliced garlic, which will give you a different outcome. The one thing I hate about garlic is you see how sticky it is. It sticks to your fingers, it sticks to everything. But I will say, using fresh garlic versus that stuff you can buy in a jar is one thing, culinarily speaking, that like it's worth it to take the time and to have garlicky smelling fingers, because the flavor is not even close. So use the real garlic if you can. All right, I think we're ready to move over to the stove and we'll get started, get these things sauteing while we talk about the rest of our chili ingredients. So Amber, I think you can go ahead and spotlight my stove cam. I'm just gonna wash my hands real quick, get some of that garlic off. All right, hopefully you can still hear me okay. You're not gonna be able to see me over here because I gotta be over here. I'm gonna start by turning my stove on about medium high, where I have my pot that I'm gonna be making this chili. And my number one tip is always let your pan get hot before you put anything in the pan. Number 2 tip, put your oil in the pan. Once it's hot, let it spread out. And when you put that first thing in the pan, you want to hear sizzling. You want to start to see color. That's what's going to give you flavor. And honestly, I feel like the thing that so many people do is, myself included, I've done it, is we rush, right? We think like, oh, I just want to get this done. And so your onions are in the pan and they're just, you know, looking kind of pale. And then you're like, oh, well, I just want to get it moving. So you just add the next thing. Really give your vegetables in particular some time to get some nice color on them, because at the end of the day, that's what helps build flavor in a dish. So I'm going to really seriously like let that get hot. While I do that, actually now would be a great time to talk about the spices, because those are going to go in after we cook our veggies and our turkey. We're going to do our spices. As I mentioned, I went ahead and pre-measured out what I needed. I have my 2 teaspoons of chili powder. I have 2 teaspoons of ground cumin. I have a teaspoon of smoked paprika, a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a teaspoon of oregano. So back to the question from before, I definitely think that you could sub for the cinnamon with your pumpkin pie spice. And then just make sure you still put like your chili powder. And, you know, I think that the combination here is really lovely because, you know, both the smoked paprika and the cumin bring a nice smokiness in a little different ways to the dish. And then that cinnamon and those more like flavors that we're used to thinking of in a sweet capacity really provide a lot of balance. I know myself, I grew up eating Cincinnati chili. I don't know if anybody's ever had Cincinnati chili before, but it is delicious. And the trick ingredient, or like the thing that makes it so special, is they put cinnamon in it. So this is a flavor profile to me that is like, it's not weird at all to think about putting cinnamon in a savory dish. If it's new to you, trust me, give it a try. It's delicious. You're going to love it. And at the end of the day, the cinnamon is just there adding a little something, whereas we still get the savory coming through loud and clear. Spices are ready. I'm going to go ahead and actually add a half teaspoon of salt to this. I'm going to hold my hand over here, see what I'm doing, see if it's getting warm. It's feeling pretty warm. Add my salt to my spices, so that'll be ready to go. Once this is feeling warm, I can go in with my teaspoon of oil. So this recipe calls for 2 teaspoons, and we're going to do a half and half situation. So we're going to put a teaspoon to start. The only thing about using this pan is that the handles can get a little hot. I got to put my mitts on. All right, give it a little swirl, and then I can go in with my pepper and onion. I don't know that you can hear that, but I did get some nice sizzle action.
We could definitely hear the sizzle. It was
Okay, good. My next number 3 top tip. Don't constantly stir your food when you're doing stuff like this. Let it go. You're never going to get that color and flavor if you're standing over it, constantly stirring. This is something Amber can attest. We've done a bunch of med student classes recently in the kitchen, and they are big. They like to stand there. They just like to stand there and stir it the whole time, no matter what they're cooking. So we always are trying to encourage letting things have a minute. The good news is we got plenty of other stuff to do, so we can let that chill while we move on to the next thing. So the next thing really is just making sure you have the rest of your stuff ready. So we're using canned pumpkin today. Fun fact, when you have this size can of pumpkin, which is your 15-ounce can, like, you know, your standard size, you're going to get 1 3/4 cup of pumpkin out of this. So we're using a cup in the pumpkin chili that we're making. We're using this in the chili. And then I'm going to save a 1/4 cup to put in my lattes. And then we have an extra 1/2 cup we can play around with. Or honestly, you could put the rest of it in the chili if you really wanted to. You know what? Actually, I think I'm going to do that today, because the more I think about it, I don't want to have leftover and then think about what to do with it later. So I'm going to measure out my 1/4 cup that I need for my latte, and then think I'll just go ahead and put the rest in. The great thing about adding pumpkin to a dish like this is that, this will be ready, is that we get extra fiber. Pumpkin is another, you know, it's a vegetable and it's a great source of fiber. It's something you may not think about as having a lot of fiber, but it does. The next thing I need to do is drain my beans. So today I'm using, excuse me, I'm going to give this a quick stir. Today I'm going to be using cannellini beans. Any style of white bean will really work in this. When I made this the last time, I did use those the smaller beans that are just called white beans or maybe navy beans that you may see sometimes. The cannellini are the ones that are, you know, they're kind of like a kidney bean. They look like a kidney bean, but they're white basically. This is what I have, so this is what I'm going with. Just gonna go ahead and give them a rinse in the sink in my little colander here. And I always buy low sodium beans or the lowest sodium beans I can get my hands on, but it's still good to drain and rinse that excess liquid because ultimately that's where most of the sodium is coming from, so that we can then control our own sodium in the dish. And then the last thing I need is another canned product. I love this dish because we're using so many canned things. How convenient. I'm using the chopped green chilies. So these may be familiar to you. You know, we often see them in Mexican cooking. What I love about these is that they're fire roasted usually. You can, oh, I don't think you can see in my can without me like spilling it. But there are some little like blackened charred pieces in there, which just means super delicious flavor. What's really nice too is that these are mild. These are not a spicy chili. They are also, this whole dish is not going to be spicy. It's not going to be what you think of in terms of like a really spicy chili. It's a little bit lighter, milder in flavor. It's got a little more nuance going on, but if you like spicy, by all means, add some more spice to it. It's not going to hurt. Let me see what's going on with my peppers and onions. I'm getting a little brown on the bottom of my pan, but that's okay. I'm fine with it. I'm going to turn my heat up just a little bit. I can see the onion is starting to develop a little bit of browning on the edges, which is good. Now I'm looking at my pan and I'm realizing my recipe says I should move my vegetables to the outer edges and then cook my turkey. I'm a little worried I'm not going to have enough room. And this is one of those moments where like I wrote this recipe and I'm doing it, but I'm feeling like, wait a minute, you know, this just doesn't seem like it's going to work out. I think I'm going to take my peppers and onions out so that I can give my turkey room to get some color on it. That's a judgment call that I hope people feel confident in making. You know, if a recipe says something like that and you think to yourself, wait a minute, my instinct is telling me that if I took these peppers and onions out, I'd probably have more room for my turkey and I can always add them back in later. Like, go ahead and do it. I'm just going to grab a plate actually so that I have somewhere to put them. And then while I wait for that, I'm going to talk about the kale. So kale comes on a little stalk like this. Pretty easy to deal with. You're just gonna grab the leafy bits and pull them away from the stalk. This is tough and not delicious texture to eat. So we're really just interested in our leafy bits. And as I mentioned before, I want about 2 cups worth of this. It will wilt down quite a bit. The other thing I would like to mention is, I don't know if you can tell, but my kale's a little limp. It's okay. It's a great use for some limp kale because it's going into this hot dish where we want it to, you know, get soft anyway. So what do we care if it's a little limp? If I was eating it in a salad, I might like the crunchier version a little better. I think this is going to be about 2 cups. I might just go a little extra. It never hurts to add extra veggies, right? And then once I have that, I'll just go through and tear it up a little bit more into some smaller little bite-sized pieces. You can also obviously do this with your knife, whatever's easier for you. Oh, it's getting hot in my kitchen, guys. Oh, my muffins. I need to go back to my muffins. Amber, you didn't remind me.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. Okay, so your muffin batter should be ready to get portioned up, and it's a great use of our time. What I am going to do though is, because I want to get my turkey in, I'm going to actually do that first, and then I'll get those muffins in. So let me go ahead and get these peppers and onions out of here. The only bad thing about using the Dutch oven is it's kind of heavy because it's cast iron. And I've got a lot of browning in my pan. I'm not worried about it. It doesn't look like burnt browning. It looks like.
How about the garlic? The recipe says to put the garlic in before the turkey.
I'm going rogue. You can do it that way for sure. I'm gonna do it once my turkey is cooked because I like to have my garlic not be in there for too long. It's not gonna hurt once the turkey's in because the turkey's gonna make moisture, so you shouldn't get burnt garlic. The reason you'll often see garlic added towards the end of a sauteing process like this is because we're fearful of it burning. If you've ever had burnt garlic, you know it does not taste good. So our fear is that we don't want to burn. If we have enough moisture in the pan, we shouldn't have that issue. So I just am going in with a pound of ground turkey now. I did add my extra 1 teaspoon of oil. I'll go ahead and let that kind of, again, hang out, get some color on that first side. And now let me come back to my muffin setup. Oops, my papers are going everywhere. That's all right. All right, so wow. I don't know if you can tell, super fluffy now. We've already activated that baking powder a bit, which is really great. We want to see that. I set this down. Now I do have a handy dandy muffin scoop. This makes life very easy for tasks like this. Now mine is not the correct size. I need to do 2 scoops of this one, but I do like this size scoop, to be honest with you, because it's really great for cookies. And so then if I'm doing cookies, I just do 1 scoop. And if I'm doing something like this, I can do the 2 scoops. Also, I just realized I didn't put my cheese in.
Oh, that was my question. Okay.
We're gonna have some plain and some with cheese. It's all good. This is a Wednesday that feels like a, I don't know, Monday, Friday? I don't know what it feels like. All right, I'm gonna fold in my cheese and my pepper in the rest of this. There we go. But whatever you're adding, make sure you add that. And then get your scoops going. And every time I've made this, it has been the perfect 12 muffins. So we'll see if we get it today. Oops, I'm making a huge mess. I think mine might be a little filled high, so I am short a few, but that's okay. They will puff up, and that's not a problem. Just gonna wipe that off. I'll just remove these liners so I don't have that in the oven. And we give my turkey a stir and get those babies into the oven. And these should take about 15 minutes. All right, set a timer for that. Give my turkey a stir. Now, this turkey I'm using today is very lean. I think this was like a 95 5% lean. You know, we do like a leaner ground meat product because we can save on unnecessary saturated fat. But you will notice that it doesn't get very brown. And it does keep this kind of like whitish color to it. That's okay. That's kind of just what turkey does. I am gonna just try to get it broken up as much as I possibly can. Amber, can you do me a favor and stall for 1 second while I figure out why my air conditioning is not on and I'm burning up and dying?
Oh yeah, I'm so good.
Can you just hone in on my stove cam for a second?
Okay, 1 second.
Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that turkey, it does, I agree, Cynthia, it does look more pulled than ground. It did start as ground turkey. The thing about ground turkey, unlike ground beef, it doesn't coagulate the same. So it really needs to be broken down a lot with the spoon or spatula that you're using. Heather's using that flat tip spatula, so it just doesn't have the same type of hit when she's hitting that curved pot. But she is using a ground meat item. This would be really delicious though with a shredded or pulled turkey or chicken or pork even, which would be really good with like a leftover protein. At least I think so.
That's an amazing point. Thank you, Amber. I agree. I have not made this exact recipe using something like that, but I totally think it would work. I did just go ahead and make a little hole in the bottom of my mixture here to throw my garlic in. I am gonna let that stir in a bit. The trick with garlic is just to really wait till you start to smell it. Once it becomes nice and fragrant, you know, you can move on to the next step. The other thing I did off camera is I did pour some stock into a measuring cup. I have my 2 cups of stock here. I'm using a vegetable stock that we make at the Teaching Kitchen from all of our vegetable scraps, but you can definitely use chicken, veggie, both work. I would say if you buy the box, just try to look for the lowest sodium option you can find. There definitely are some brands that make like a no salt added, because again, you want to control that yourself, right? All right, smelling my garlic. Yum, yum, yum. All right, I'm gonna go back in with my reserved peppers and onions. Now, if I had used a wider pan, that would have helped in this situation of me removing that. So it's just a good little lesson. Sometimes you realize, oh, next time I'll use my bigger, wider pan for this. But hopefully, you know, that is just something that I can show you that I'm trained, and even I have things that happen and mistakes get made, and you can save anything. There's no mistake in cooking that is too bad that it cannot be saved, in my opinion. All right, I added those back in. My next step is going to be that I want to add my spices and let them toast and kind of coat everything. This is something that you see often. I've seen it the most in Indian cooking, to be honest with you, where we are taking spices and we are cooking them a little bit in oil so that we can bring out their flavor. Sometimes when we have soups and stews recipes, we don't do this step. And I just think it's a missed opportunity where we would just dump spices into a wet mixture. If we add them now and let them coat everything, we are going to develop a little bit more flavor. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Dump those in and give them a stir. And you'll know because you'll start to smell them right away. And it smells so delicious. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, I can really smell that cinnamon, but like in a good way. All right, the next thing that we want to do is we're going to add our pumpkins, our beans, and our green chilies, and our stock, and we're going to scrape up any brown bits that we have on the bottom of the pan. So I have that flat bottomed wooden bamboo kind of spatula, as Amber mentioned. You know, a wooden spoon works just as well. Anything that you can use to kind of give your pan a gentle scrape so that you can get all that good flavor bits up off the bottom. So I actually will, let me give it one more stir for these spices. Oh my gosh. It smells so good. I'm gonna go in first with my stock so I can start loosening. That liquid is gonna be what's gonna get us going to loosen those bits. We need that flavor. All right, and then I'll go in with my can of chilies. And my pumpkin. I'll start with what I'm supposed to put, about a cup, and then I'll see how I feel. Go in with my beans. And then give it all a nice stir. So you'll see now, you know, the color of this, it's pretty pale. It doesn't have a lot going on, but that's part of why I wanted to add the kale. And I'm also going to add an additional green garnish to mine at the end, so we get a little bit more color. Oh no, am I frozen?
Your camera's good, but the stovetop is frozen.
Okay. My hand is in two places. How weird. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
Oh, I think it is good now, Heather.
All right. I'm going to let that do its thing. Let it chill out for a bit. Let it come up to a nice simmer. The good news is we don't really need a lot of time with this chili, but you could certainly do it longer if you wanted. You could do this in a slow cooker if you wanted to. You have a lot of options here. All right, I got 7 minutes left on my cornbread, which is good. I think I'm going to start thinking about my latte. Is my timing good to start thinking about my latte, Amber?
Definitely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And you know what? I am going to add this extra pumpkin because why not? It'll also help to thicken the stew. I know, Amber, that's something that you and I have talked about. You do pumpkin in other types of soups and things. Just to use it to thicken it, right?
I really do. It's very similar to how, like in a chowder, you would put white potato and press some of it against the side so it like mixes in. It's a really easy way, especially if you're not going to have a roux action. It makes it really easy to activate the starch.
Oh my gosh, yum, yum, yum. This is a lot of chili. Luckily, I've already promised some to my neighbor. I'm gonna share with her. All right, while we wait for that to kind of simmer, let's talk about our lattes. So I am gonna get my coffee brewed up. I'm gonna brew about 4 ounces of strong coffee. A latte, you know, the thing about a latte is traditionally a latte is made with espresso and then steamed milk with a little bit of foam on top. So it's a lot of milk to coffee ratio, which is why we want to make sure we use a pretty strong coffee. Now I have what my recipe says, which is 2 cups of my low fat milk. And I am going to divide this a little bit. I'm going to do a little trick. This is a fun thing I learned. I am going to put about a 1/4 cup of my milk into this little jar here. About like halfway full of this jar, which is like an 8-ounce jar. This is how I'm going to make a little bit of milk foam to go on the top of my latte. It's going to be really exciting. We're going to save that for the end. In the meantime,
Are you going for like a half, like at least a 50% air in it for room to shake?
no. Oh, yes. Yes, I need room to be able to shake. So the idea, you gave away the trick already, Amber. I'm going to shake this, and that's how I'm going to create that foam. Fingers crossed it works today. A lot of things are kind of going a little sideways for me that did not go in my test, but I have faith in myself that I can pull it together. I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of my milk into my saucepan here. And I realized the handle is hot, so got my mitt on. All right, milk in. We've got our 1/4 cup of pumpkin. You know, that's another thing too. If you go to your coffee shop of choice and you order your pumpkin spice latte, they're not putting any real pumpkin in there. It's all flavoring. It's all full of tons of sugar. It's delicious. But this is just a way that we can kind of satisfy that craving at home, make it a little bit lighter and healthier for us. All right, got my pumpkin in. I need my sugar. Now I do have 2 tablespoons of sugar. This is a personal preference. I went a little bit on the low sugar side today. I don't love a lot of sugar in my coffee personally, but also I'm trying to be health conscious, right? So this will give us about a tablespoon of sugar per coffee drink because this is going to make 2. If you love sugar and you're not worried about your sugar, feel free to add a little more. If you are and you want to go even less, you have that ability. All right. I also need a tablespoon of vanilla extract. And I lost my tablespoon. I will say this is one time to consider, if I can get the lid off, buying the pure vanilla extract, the really good stuff, right? I will say there are definitely times in life when you're using vanilla, it doesn't much matter and it doesn't make a huge difference. This is a time where you're going to thank yourself if you have the really good vanilla. And it might seem like a lot, it's a tablespoon, but if you think about how much like vanilla syrup they put in at the coffee shop, you need it. All right, and then we get a teaspoon of our wonderful pumpkin pie spice, which I've lost my little AARP measures. That's all right. So a teaspoon of the pumpkin pie spice we made. Now you can also feel this out and see how you feel, how it suits your taste. I'm gonna go ahead and whisk this together. I have my whisk over here. And then the idea is we wanna heat it, but we're not trying to cook it. We did a couple of versions of this and we found that if you take it too far and you cook it too much, it actually, the flavor is not delicious. So whisk it just to get everything nice and combined, get that pumpkin broken up. I'm gonna go put this on the stove so you can see it on the stove can. We're gonna see what it looks like. So it's just a kind of pumpkin pie spice looking milk. And I'm gonna put that on like a medium-ish heat. Let me get my coffee brewed up. Now I have these really fun mugs that I got that are these little clear glass. So hopefully this will be a fun thing to show.
It's super cute.
What we're gonna do with this. Okay, so we're gonna shake our milk to froth it up. Let me just move all of my excess stuff. Give my chili a stir. Turn it down a little bit. It's a bit vigorously boiling at the moment. How's everybody doing that's cooking along? Should we have a check-in?
I'm trying to scroll through a little bit. Let me see if I can switch everybody to. I'm gonna switch
My chili has a beautiful color.
Oh, good.
Yeah, everything looks good so far, so good. I'm keeping up.
Awesome. Love it.
I actually have a little electric foamer. I guess I could use that too.
You know, I was gonna say, people, you know, they have those little wands with the little whiskey thing on it to foam. I don't have one. So I was looking into what could I do to get my milk to foam.
Putting it in a blender works really well.
Yes, we could do that too. This is definitely a manual way. I will say this isn't working as well for me today, but I think it's because my milk's been sitting out for a little bit. I might actually dump this out and try with some colder milk. And in the meantime, let me grab my muffins, which just went, my timer just went off.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
My spinach, or my chili looks great. I use spinach instead of kale, and the color's really pretty in there.
We're supposed to put the spinach in now?
You can put it in, now my muffins are not done, so they're going back in. My toothpick is wet. You can put it in now. I mean, once you feel like you have flavor developed, that would be a good time to get your greens in. I'll go ahead and add mine now.
One mistake I made with my muffin, I purchased white cornmeal. It wasn't a mistake, but
Well,
different.
do they just look different? They're sure they're gonna taste delicious.
They look white, but
Yeah.
so yeah, but it's good. I'm sure it'll taste fine.
Oh, I think it will 100% taste fine. Okay. I will say when you do the add-ins in the muffins, like having the having that cheese and chili that I put in mine, it does mean they might take a little longer to cook.
Yes, I agree.
All right.
I use the cheese, the corn, and the chili.
Mm.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
Did it come out a good consistency, Miss Rita?
Yeah, it was great. And I used my little, I have a little ice cream scoop that works just fine. An old antique that I grew up with. I don't know if you could see it, a little ice cream scoop.
Oh, I love it.
That worked. Wasn't for cookies, but
We always recommend at the Goldring Center for in community classes, well, in every one of our classes, we use those ice cream scoops for measuring out everything. It's so much easier when you're scooping out those for the muffins.
yeah, it was good. I never used it for muffins.
I will say that's one of those kitchen devices that seems like it might be a one-use item, but you actually can find a lot of uses for it. Oh yeah, my milk is definitely getting much foamier now because I use the cold milk. So that's a good tip for those of you who are gonna try this later. Cold milk will foam better. I will also say, I went to a presentation recently from a dairy board, and I learned from them that lower fat milk actually foams and froths better than high fat milk or cream. So that's just something interesting. And I think kind of goes against what we naturally think, right? You think about, we make whipped cream from heavy cream and get it real stiff. And yes, that's possible, but particularly for something like this, where we're just trying to be quick about it, we can do well with the lower fat milk and save us some calories. All right, Amber, do you want to come back over to me while I assemble this latte?
Sure do.
All right. I'm gonna grab a spoon, just a little teaspoon kind of spoon.
Do you need
All
your
right.
stove cam as well?
No, I'm gonna pull my pot off. Come down here so you can see. So I just brewed like a half cup of coffee into this little measuring cup. Whoop. Let's turn that off. All right. Oh my gosh, this milk mixture, I don't know if you can see it, it smells so good. So good. It's just a little sweet. It's like perfect. Okay, so in my cup, I'm gonna do, these are pretty small cups, I will say. So I'll probably put, whoops. I'm gonna put half of in each. Okay, then I'm just going to top it. And I definitely have a little bit more milk mixture than what I need for these small cups. You can sort of play around. Oh, this is going to be dangerous. Hold on. Let me use my brain here. Let me use my brain and get something to scoop that out with so that I don't make a giant mess. All right, we'll use this ladle. Yeah, and you can kind of play around with this a little bit. Maybe you feel like you like less milk mixture, maybe you like more coffee or the opposite. Totally customizable, but I will say it's a good base recipe if you love a sweeter coffee drink like this. So I'm gonna fill this pretty high. And then let me do one more shake on my milk. Shake, 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 shake. Oh my gosh, okay. And then I'll work quickly and just use my spoon to add that frothiness to the top. Oh my gosh, that looks like, other than the fact that I got it spilling down the side, that looks like a coffee shop drink, doesn't it? And then you know what I'm gonna do, just because I wanna be a little extra, I'm gonna take my pumpkin pie spice and just give a little sprinkle over the top. Yay!
It's beautiful.
Love it. All right.
All right, Heather. Cynthia wants to bet that it smells amazing. Is it that true?
It does, although it is very hot in here, and I did get my air conditioning turned on. You know, the thing is, we're in New Orleans, right? We planned for fall. It's a little rainy today. It is a good chilly day, but it's still hot out. And I think I had my air conditioning off because it was cool, and now it's hot again, and all this cooking. But it smells so good. She's right about that. I'm gonna go ahead and plate up a bowl of my chili and grab those muffins out of the oven because I know they're done now.
So can we add our kale now?
Yes, definitely. All right, let's see. I need a bowl. Oh yeah, this is so hearty, but also just light. Which is something that's kind of nice, right? To get a little bit of a change of pace. All right, now I'm gonna try to make it look nice. All right, let's see. So I got my bowl of chili. Got some dark leafy green action. Got some nice orangey colors from the pumpkin. Now we have a couple of things that we put on there as suggestions. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do all of it because I'm just feeling like, why not today? So we have an option. Let me get that oven turned off. That will help me a lot. We have the option of adding some yogurt, some plain yogurt, which, you know, we use plain Greek yogurt in the teaching kitchen all the time as a replacement for sour cream. It definitely has that tart sour cream kind of action to it. So I do think that makes a great little chili topping. And then I'm also going to go ahead and add a little bit of cilantro. Even though, you know, we don't have like a lot of those vibes going on, but I think it's nice to have a little green. And honestly, I could chop this, but I think I'm just going to be really rustic and just tear it up. Keep it simple. Sprinkle that over the top. And I'm just using the leaves. You know, whenever we're garnishing, it's nice to just stick to the leaves and not mess around too much with the stems, just for a texture thing. And then lastly, I'm also going to add a few of these little pumpkin seeds because I had them. And I just think, why not? It's fun. We have pumpkin and pumpkin. And that'll add a nice little crunch. We'll get some extra little fiber up in there.
Seeds are highly underrated.
Yeah, I love these. And honestly, we say in the recipe to toast them, but I think they're fine not toasted as well. Oh, let me get a muffin. Muffin. Get this out of the way. Maybe I'll even be fancy and do this.
I know using a plate
I mean, I would never actually do this in real life because like, I don't often take so much care to make my food look so delicious that I just plan to eat for myself. But I always say in the classes, take the extra minute, make it look nice. It is nice when you do that for yourself or for your family, obviously. Show them how much you care.
Oh, Rita's plate looks just like yours, Heather.
All right, you want to go back to the gallery view so we can check in with everybody and see all their plates?
Okay.
Oh, we got Rita's showing us, Karen's showing us. These are awesome.
All right, if you want to see everybody, just make sure you switch your view to gallery view if you can't, if you have that ability. Or Amber, do you want to do some quick spotlighting?
Oh, yeah.
Let's put your tech skills to the test.
All right, we got Miss Rita's over here.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yep, just like the instructors. And
There
the
we
silicone,
go.
the silicone, what do you call it, cupcake containers, and worked very well, just came right out.
Perfect. Love it. Great tip.
Oh, Miss Baker, you look real good over there.
What's that around
Thank
the edge? What's that around the edge? You got some cilantro on your bowl there?
Yeah, I chopped it up.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Awesome. And Miss Barbara,
Those
look at that.
are good.
Yum.
And here's, anyone else before I show mine? Okay, here we go, here we
Hold
go.
on, Miss Lynette, I'm trying to find you my top portion. All right.
Tell me if you see it. I can't tell.
It's a little blurry.
It's a little blurry, but I can see. I think I can see it.
Mm.
It's
I see
blurry.
it.
Oh, I know why, because the background is on. So let me hold it up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, hold it up in front of you.
Yep,
Oh,
tilt it.
there you go.
Oh, I don't know. Chili.
Mhm.
Well, you see it. Now you see it because in a few minutes you won't. Here's my muffin. I put cheese on top.
Oh,
Really
I
yeah.
like when it adds a little crunch on top, the little golden.
Right.
onion.
And of course, can't wait to drink this, my latte.
That chili's pretty good.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to show us what they made or you go?
Oh, I'm
Oh,
excited for my muffin. Look. Mmm.
Miss Andrea, that looks awesome. You got all the things.
Oh, yeah.
Look at Andrea. Wow.
Cynthia, I know. It's hard when you don't, when everyone's showing their food, right?
So all of you
Oh,
all,
God.
I want everyone who cooked today to send me a photo of their dish.
I already ate it.
Email in chat. Send me your photo and also send me your address. I put my email in chat to make sure. Uh-oh, there you go. Amber has it. To make sure I mail you your apron.
All right. It's a lot of hot food, but I can do it.
And Heather, before we leave,
Yum, yum, yum.
we did ask a question about who wanted to cook along in November and December, and several respondents wanted more information on exactly how they would pick up their ingredients and what that would look like. So can you explain to them what that process would look like?
Sure. Okay. So we have the option, if you are here locally in New Orleans and you're interested, we can we'll work with Lynetta to figure this out, but we do have the option of supplying your ingredients to you. What that looks like is you would need to come by our teaching kitchen, which is located in Mid-City, New Orleans. We're at 300 North Broad Street. If you're familiar with the Whole Foods grocery store, we are in that same building. We're right next door to them. So you would come ahead of class. We'd set up a designated pickup day and time for you. You would come and you'd leave with a little grocery bag and all of your ingredients would be ready to go. I didn't have mine laid out like that today, It would have been good if you could have seen what that looks like, but we'll have everything pre-measured in little containers for you. The produce would obviously be whole so that you still have the ability to do all your chopping, but you would save the step, particularly like for those muffins today, you wouldn't have had to measure any of that out. You could have just dump everything together. And yeah, so we can figure out what that looks like more logistically, but like that's the general gist of it. You go home with the bag, sort of like if you ordered something from one of those meal services like a HelloFresh or Blue Apron or all those different ones that exist now. You have everything ready to go with your recipe in front of you, and you log on to the class, and makes life kind of easy. So
And
it's another little, oh, go ahead, Amber.
And it would be the full amount for these recipes that we cook that you'd see online. It's not for like 1 or 2 servings. It'd be the same amount of people to feed.
Yeah, definitely. We would give you this full batch, you know, of the recipe that we cook. So you'd have exactly what we have.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
What would be the date of that next November?
I think
We'll
it's the
get back.
17th.
Yeah, we need to get back to you on that because Lynetta, I think you and I need to figure out the logistics of that with everything we got going on. But I think the class is, yes, the class is scheduled for Wednesday, November 17th.
Right.
There'll be an option to stop by and pick up the already measured out things or to supply our own, because I won't be back in New Orleans until the end of November.
Correct. You can do either or.
Okay.
And that way people that aren't in New Orleans can still join us and cook from home and supply their own stuff. But if you're here and you want that added convenience, we can do that for you.
Okay, so this is where we are with that process. Right now, we're waiting approval to see if it we can go according to protocols for the pickup, final approval. Secondly, if you do want to participate, email me. I want to participate in the cook along in November. You have to email me to let me know so I can communicate with you about exactly when your pickup date and other specific information, because I won't be emailing the entire list. I will email only those who tell me they want to cook along. So that email address is in chat. My email address in chat. 2 things. The 5, I think it was 5 people who cooked along today. Send me your address and a photo of your food. And also let me know if you want to participate in the pickup program next month.
Awesome.
I'm so busy eating, I'm sorry.
I hope everybody that cooked today really enjoyed these dishes. Maybe it's a little something different. Certainly, I hope it's a different way to think of using canned pumpkin puree or canned pumpkin. Obviously, we're staying away from the pumpkin pie filling, which was already sweetened and flavored. But I think this is a really nice festive fall menu we've got going on here. Lots of yummy flavor. I gotta say, I'm really enjoying this latte.
I'm really enjoying everything. Thanks everybody for joining us this month. Thanks Heather. Thank
Thank you.
Amber.
Thank you.
Don't forget to email me.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Happy fall.